This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Monday, March 15th. Welcome to Africa 54. We continue to work remotely because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but what hasn't changed is our commitment to bringing you the latest and most important news from the African continent and around the world. This is today's Africa 54. Armed men attempted to kidnap more students in Nigeria's Kaduna state overnight on Sunday, according to a state government official. The Kaduna State Commissioner of Internal Security and Home Affairs said police, army, and others had repelled attacks on another school and at a local government office near Kaduna Airport. All 307 students at the Government Science Secondary School in Ikara were accounted for. Meanwhile, a video of some of the students kidnapped from a college in northwest Nigeria emerged on Saturday, showing them cowering on a forest floor as armed captors hit them with sticks. 39 students are missing after gunmen stormed the Federal College of Forestry Mechanization in Kaduna State overnight on Thursday, the fourth school abduction in northern Nigeria since December. Video footage shared on social media showed roughly 24 students begging for help in English and Hausa. Rising magma and empty coffers following an allegation of embezzlement have left volcano watchers in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo worried that they will not be able to provide an early warning if a volcano towering over the city of Goma erupts. David Doyle reports.
Towering over the Congolese city of Goma is Mount Nyiragongo, home to one of the largest continually active lava lakes. It could also be a disaster waiting to happen. Increased volcanic activity has experts fearing an eruption could be on the way. But the organisation that monitors Nyiragongo, the Observatoire Volcanologique de Goma, or OVG, is struggling to make even the most basic checks. That's because its funding has been cut, following allegations of embezzlement. At one of Nyiragongo's volcanic vents, OVG lead scientist Honore Chiraba is taking measurements.
Now we are at 0.5%, which means that the magma is not yet rising on this side.
The 65-year-old has been regularly climbing the volcano for the past 19 years, a passion driven by fears of a repeat of 2002, the last time Nyiragongo erupted. Then 250 people died and 120,000 were made homeless. Goma's population is estimated to have tripled in the past 20 years, putting more in harm's way. But the World Bank has declined to renew a 4-year, $2 million funding program, saying OVG lacked experience and there were weaknesses in implementing such a grant. It added that it could not corroborate allegations of graft, but said it upheld high anti-corruption standards. The grant ran out in late 2020. The World Bank said it was up to Congo's government to continue financing OVG's crucial role. OVG's management and Democratic Republic of Congo's government declined to comment. But what this means for Chiraba and his colleagues is they are left unable to pay for an internet connection to run remote sensors and fuel to transport researchers to the volcano.
The more magma that goes up into the crater, the more the crater expands. We need to know exactly where that is.
A study published in August suggested a potential eruption could take place between 2024 and 2027 if volcanic activity remains the same. But without funding, Chiraba says they won't be able to provide the early warning for the people of Goma, living in the shadow of this awe-inspiring volcano.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. A massive locust outbreak continues to threaten farmers' fields in East Africa. Now, a Kenyan company says it has a solution to turn the pests into profits. VOA's Arashar Basadi has more.
Farmers like the ones at this tea plantation in Kenya struggle to protect their crops from hungry swarms of locusts. But when darkness falls and the insects are well fed and tired, the farmers fight back.
So once they roost, we mobilize communities around those areas to harvest them overnight, because that is when it's most appropriate to harvest locusts. It's at night when they actually sleepy, they have little energy to move, and they're also very lazy.
Natalina Lopeyok is a livelihood officer in Kenya's Turkana County. She and local farmers track locust swarms during the day to capture them by night. For some harvesters, it's time for payback.
Now these insects have arrived in our area. They were very many, and they terrorized us by eating the food we planted, destroying everything. So I thought, let me terrorize them by looking for them, and here they are.
Farmer-turned-harvester Pharis Githinji saw a way to earn enough money to feed his family by selling his locusts for 50 cents a kilo. Laura Stamford founded The Bug Picture, a company offering a solution to the locust problem in the Horn of Africa. She says in February alone, 25 to 30 people harvested 2.5 metric tons of locusts.
If you look at what this means, if you could scale it, it isn't that this is a really insignificant project. This has the ability to be something quite big if we were able to look at a larger mobilization and take advantage of this, because these swarms they're not disappearing. They are incredibly effective at breeding.
The Bug Picture dries and grinds the locusts before sending them to Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, where they'll be mixed with other animal feed and studied as a viable source of food. Swarms can move as many as 150 kilometers per day, and East Africa is amid its worst locust outbreak in 70 years. Local farmers say they're looking for any solution to end it. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
U.S. President Joe Biden hits the road after signing a $1.9 trillion economic stimulus package, and Americans begin to receive stimulus checks. Meanwhile, Washington debates on how to handle a surge of migrants arriving at the U.S. southern border. Michelle Quinn reports.
President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are traveling as part of a so-called Help Is Here tour to promote the $1.9 trillion economic stimulus package he signed into law last week. Touted as one of the most sweeping anti-poverty measures in decades, the package includes $1,400 stimulus checks for many Americans and a new $3,600 per child tax rebate for parents. No Republicans voted for the measure, arguing it was too big and unfocused.
Republicans want to make sure people get shots in the arms, kids get back to school, people get back to work, but we are not going to stand with the Democrats as they try to exploit a crisis.
Democrats point to a recent polling that shows a majority of Americans supports the package. A poll by CNN, for example, found that 61% of respondents support the relief measure. House Majority Leader Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat, says the lack of Republican support is just in Washington.
You can be sure that all of their states and communities will be benefiting from this, and they won't be complaining about it back home.
Meanwhile, Washington is at odds over how to handle a surge of migrants at the U.S. southern border. The situation has led to finger-pointing, with some Republicans saying that Biden's rollback of immigration measures implemented by former President Donald Trump are to blame for the surge. Democrats argue that it was Trump's policies that set up the situation today. Michelle Quinn, VOA News.
It is not just people from Latin America who are making the dangerous journey to the U.S. border. Haitians and asylum seekers from Africa are also trying to enter the U.S., oftentimes undergoing an even more treacherous trip. VOA's Elizabeth Lee has the details.
For many migrants, getting to the land of opportunity is a dangerous journey. But for Mosemie Altidor, an asylum seeker from Haiti, the situation in her home country was worse.
2 robbers attacked me. They beat me. They stabbed me.
She says she almost died. Unable to support her 3 children, Altidor left them with her mother and traveled to Belize to find work, and eventually ended up joining a caravan to walk to the United States while pregnant.
I didn't see a life there. I only saw death. So instead of dying, I took the road.
When Altidor arrived in Mexico, she was left behind. She made it to the border only through the help of strangers and was allowed to enter the U.S.
They were not going to hold me because I was pregnant.
In the U.S., Altidor, her now 18-month-old baby, and approximately 60 other Haitian migrants live in temporary housing provided by the Catholic Charities Diocese of San Diego while they wait for their immigration court hearings. But they are the exception, says Guerline Jozef of Haitian Bridge Alliance, a nonprofit community organization.
Yes, in February alone, we had over 1,000 people who got deported. And sometimes it would be one deportation flight, and we also saw up to 3 deportation flights in one day. And as I mentioned, in those flights, we saw pregnant women, 26 weeks pregnant women. We saw infants as young as 1 and 2 months old.
Jozef says this is not the time to deport Haitians when their home country is currently experiencing political unrest after an alleged failed coup.
We are demanding the Biden administration to stop the deportation and expulsion.
The Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, has not responded to VOA's request for a comment about deportations of asylum seekers from Haiti. But DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is asking all asylum seekers to wait as the Biden administration revises former President Donald Trump's immigration policy during a pandemic.
If families come, if single adults come to the border, we are obligated to, in the service of public health, including the health of the very people who are thinking of coming, to impose the travel restrictions.
Meaning deportations. However, there are reports of inconsistent treatment of migrants.
We are hearing across the border, not only in San Diego, in McAllen, Texas, and other places, that people are getting processed and let in, and some of the same Haitian group who are coming through are deported.
Even for Altidor, who is allowed to enter, her future is far from certain, as her fate will be decided by an immigration court. Elizabeth Lee, VOA News.
Aid groups say the number of migrants gathering at the U.S.-Mexico border hoping to apply for asylum or refugee status has been steadily increasing since the Biden administration took over. VOA's Laura Spelvida reports.
This is San Isidro, in the state of California. On the other side of this port of entry between Mexico and the U.S. is called El Chaparral, a neighborhood in Tijuana. This place has become home to more than 300 migrant men, women, and children from different parts of Central America and Haiti. They are living without access to clean water and survive on food provided by non-profits and charities. Their hope is to get to the United States, and many have a message for President Joe Biden.
I will ask him to help us get to the United States because I want to go to school.
Luis is 11 years old and originally from Honduras. He hasn't been in school for the past year due part to the pandemic and because he and his mother are waiting at the border. They're asking the Biden administration to open the border or give migrant families a chance to apply for asylum or refugee. U.S. officials recently began permitting a limited number of migrants to enter the United States to pursue asylum claims, a shift from former Trump administration policy that forced them to await U.S. immigration court dates in Mexico under a program known as the Migrant Protection Protocols, or MPP. But the Biden administration is moving slowly. For instance, it has not rescinded other Trump-era orders that allowed the forced expulsion of some people who entered the U.S. illegally or bypassed health checkpoints. At different border entry points, you can see buses picking up migrants in Mexico and taking them to the U.S. Another family, Maria Luisa, and her children don't have a pending case through MPP, but she still hopes for a chance to make her case for asylum.
What the president is saying that only people with MPP will enter, but we are waiting for the chance to see if they let us in like them.
The White House and Department of Homeland Security are urging migrants waiting in Mexico to check whether or not they have a pending MPP case. Immigration lawyers say most families have no access to that information and are stuck at the border.
Están en situaciones donde no hay ningún otro lugar donde puedan estar. They are in situations where they don't have any other place to go. They flee their country because their lives were in danger. For them, the only option is to keep waiting at the border with the possibility of finding a safe place for their families. The majority of the people I talked to say they would not have left their country if their lives or their kids' lives weren't in danger.
Nonprofit organizations like Doctors Without Borders monitor migrant health at the improvised camps and decry a lack of health safety measures. Local Mexican authorities worry about the spread of COVID-19.
There are people who are not in the MPP program, but it's very important that they be seen by a doctor and get access to health care and basic needs like a place to stay and food.
Most of the families at the San Isidro port of entry are still waiting. Local authorities notice a constant daily increase of people coming to this port, encouraged by information that some asylum seekers were allowed to enter the United States, and uninformed families assure they will continue to wait for the chance to enter the country. Laura Sepúlveda, VOA News, San Isidro, California.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, we'll find out why one lawyer is making models of boats and ships instead of going to court. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54. After the pandemic began, COVID medical workers became modern-day heroes. Vladimir Lenski has the story of a New York City artist who created a portrait series to honor them. Anna Rice narrates.
Dr. Anthony Fauci didn't make Time magazine's Person of the Year in 2020. But this is how New York City artist Tim Okamura has portrayed Fauci the year the coronavirus pandemic hit.
And some of them you could see him looking kind of dejected. You could see him you could see Trump sort of in the background talking, and it was funny to see Fauci's expression and just trying to capture a sense of a sense of stoicism and intellect and thought, and sort of his presence in the pantheon of American sort of personalities that have been at the forefront during this pandemic.
Okamura has also focused on nurses.
I'm living across the street from Wyckoff Heights Medical Center, which is absolutely full of COVID patients, and in fact, where one of the first COVID patients in New York was treated, and also unfortunately passed away. Yeah. So I was seeing medical workers going in and out of the hospital daily. I was seeing, their stress and the strain that they were going through.
Okamura adjusted his art to the new reality and learned to paint face masks and gloves. He dedicated special attention to the doctors' and nurses' name tags because most of their faces were covered with protective equipment.
As people, when we're trying to connect with somebody, you feel that there's kind of a barrier between you and that person, but the eyes are where you're going to find that interaction.
Jenny V can only be recognized when you look into her eyes. When she's at work, she always wears a mask. After working a 12-hour shift at a vaccination site, she says the vaccines offer hope.
It feels great because, it's signaling an end to a pandemic, hopefully, sooner rather than later. And it's nice to see that, people are coming in for it and, just excited to get it, just as excited as we are to give it.
NYU Langone Health lowered its flags to honor the COVID victims. Back in May, after Vee worked long hours fighting COVID, she found it hard to come down during her 2-hour drive home. That's when Okamura met her.
We were never taught in nursing school on how to handle a pandemic. So, when it hit, we were all, we were scared ourselves. We all have families, young children, elderly parents. And when the pandemic hit, we were just pretty much trying to figure out how to get by day to day.
Vee says while COVID vaccines are a light at the end of the tunnel is very long. She hasn't seen Okamura's portrait of her yet, just a picture on Instagram. When it's safe to do so, Okamura will give it to her as a gift, like he will gift the other portraits of medical workers as a way to give thanks and remember the pandemic's toll on human lives. For Vladimir Lensky in New York, Anna Rice, VOA News.
The US, Japan, Australia, and India, the grouping also known as the Quad, on Friday announced financing agreements to support ramping up production of up to 1 billion doses of coronavirus vaccine in India to be used in Southeast Asian countries. White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara has this report.
Southeast Asia, home to 655 million people, is hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, with most cases reported in Indonesia. The region is suffering from a shortage of coronavirus vaccines, something the United States wants to address together with Japan, Australia, and India, the grouping known as the Quad.
In an ambitious new joint partnership that is going to boost vaccine manufacturing and for the global benefit and strengthen vaccinations to benefit the entire Indo-Pacific.
The financing plan launched Friday by the Quad will help Indian vaccine manufacturers increase production of up to 1 billion doses of vaccines by 2022. They will be used mostly in Southeast Asia, according to an administration official. President Joe Biden has been under pressure to respond to Beijing's vaccine diplomacy as he seeks to vaccinate all Americans first. In May, Chinese President Xi Jinping proclaimed that Chinese-made vaccines would become a global public good. It's a narrative the Biden administration is eager to change as it seeks to address the need for vaccinations at home and around the world.
They want a coalition approach to bring all those pieces of the COVID response together to make sure that we're not just thinking about ourselves, the rich countries of the region, but we're also thinking about countries that don't have the resources and providing an alternative to the Chinese approach.
Beijing has pledged roughly 500 million doses of its vaccine to more than 45 countries and partnered to produce the vaccines with Southeast Asian countries, including Indonesia. The Quad is often seen as a counterweight to growing Chinese military and economic influence in the region. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said that Beijing should not be concerned about the summit.
This is about an anchor for peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific, and that benefits all nations of the Indo-Pacific. It benefits all the sovereign nations, and particularly our ASEAN partners that we've been a close friend of for so long.
Consequently,
the 90-minute Friday meeting is the leaders' first summit since the Quad's initial meeting in 2004. The U.S. is eager to bolster Indo-Pacific alliances and has chosen Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga to be the first leader to visit the White House for a face-to-face meeting with Biden. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
Dame Zatrowski from Struga, North Macedonia, is a lawyer by training, but his true passion is making models of boats and ships. Reporter Miki Trajkovsky went to North Macedonia to see his latest creation and filed this story, narrated by Anna Rice.
The naval ship USS Constitution was launched in 1797. Although retired from active service, the historic ship, nicknamed Old Ironsides, is the oldest commissioned naval vessel still afloat. The ship is most well known for its action during the War of 1812 against Britain, when it defeated 5 British warships. Named a museum ship in 1907, Old Ironsides has always fascinated Dame Zatrowski of Struga, North Macedonia. With the help from an engineer friend who provided the architectural design, Zatorowski embarked on a 7-year-long adventure to create a perfect replica.
Everything has gone through these two hands, from the smallest to the largest part. Most of the material I used on the model is repurposed. The goal was to make it 90% authentic.
Today, the USS Constitution is berthed at a pier in a former naval yard in Boston, Massachusetts. Zatorowski's model is a loving homage to the American frigate. It is 1.5 meters high, 2 meters long, and 45 centimeters wide. It took him about 9 hours a day for 7 years to reach this final stage. Zatorowski handcrafted every single detail and used 220 meters of cotton thread.
You may ask, where are those 220 meters of thread? Look closely. This is like a fine embroidery. The thread extends to the top, then goes back. One piece of thread can go up to 1.5 meters or 2 meters in length. Each thread has its own function. It holds the 54 cannons. Most of them are on the deck, and 22 are under the deck. There are also 4 boats that are outfitted with life belts.
The idea to build ship models was born while he was serving in the former Yugoslavia's navy.
In our free time, several of us sailors would retreat under the deck in our makeshift workshop. Instead of sleeping, we would build small boats. Model kits and additional parts were available for purchase. It was fun. I learned the craft there. It stuck with me years later.
A recognized artist, Zatorowski also builds scaled models of churches. He simultaneously works on 2 at the moment: Plaušnik, a monastery built in the 9th century, and St. John Kaneo, a Macedonian Orthodox church located on a cliff overlooking Lake Ohrid. Zatorowski's home serves as a showroom for a variety of works of art. He says he has been painting for as long as he can remember and has been building boat models for the past 30 years. Most of his works are made not to sell, but for the pure pleasure of creating them, he says. For Miki Trajkovski in Struga, North Macedonia, Anna Rice, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.